So it's right at noon right now. So we're going to start our second webinar of the month of our GEL March virtual series. And thank you for joining us. My name is Dan Saipan. I'm the director of GEL, which is Global Experiential Learning. And today we have a great experience for you all to be aware of. We usually take a trip down to Mexico, called our Vivir Mexico program. It's our longest lasting program that we have here in GEL. But of course, we can't travel now. So we wanted to give some of that experience that we have when we go down there with you all. We usually visit the U.S. Embassy and learn more about what it is and the people that work there. And we're lucky enough to have one of our U of A alumnus, our Wildcat alumni here with us, Christina Vejar, to share with us that story. I can't do this alone, so I want to introduce my team that has worked on this for the past month. If you all can introduce yourselves.
Hi everyone, happy Friday. My name is Vanessa Madrid. I am a political science student and a senior here at the U of A, and I'm also a student intern with GEL.
Hello, I'm Leslie. I'm a current senior here at the University of Arizona with the Speech, Language, and Hearing Sciences major, and I'm also an intern for GEL.
Hi everyone, my name is Aries. I am a senior at the U of A, majoring in criminal justice with a minor in psychology, and I am also a GEL intern. So what is GEL? GEL is a distinguishable program that seeks to integrate travel, education, and service learning to provide both knowledge and skills to students during their time at the U of A and beyond. We focus our efforts on not only increasing access, but participation for traditionally marginalized students, more specifically First Gen, DACA, and students from low SES backgrounds. We believe all students should have access to travel opportunities during their education. Pre-COVID, we offered both domestic and international travel opportunities at low or no cost to students. For some of these trips, students were also able to obtain credit. The focus of our programs are centered around issues of social justice, environmental justice, cultural identity exploration, and service learning.
Before we continue with this webinar, we at GEL would like to acknowledge the land in which we sit upon. With this being said, we want to share with you this land acknowledgement video that was created by the U.S American Alumni Club.
Skikdash Wisajimai, Anian Upjigik, Amy Lynn Spotted Wolf, Aniapam Amjad, Judge Shaik, Wawikir Dikjikshan, Tanatam Joed. Annual Miss Indian Arizona 2020-2021. Good day. My name is Amy Lynn Spotted Wolf, and I come from the Fresno Canyon community in the Babikiwi district on the Tanatam Nation. I am a senior here at the University of Arizona studying elementary education under the Indigenous Teacher Education Project. I am Miss Indian Arizona 2020-2021. Samach Achmach An Tanatam Hajurika Dam Oyopo. We acknowledge our presence on the Tanatam ancestral lands. For time immemorial, the Tanatam have been part of this landscape and the University of Arizona. The rich history and connection the Tanatam have to the University of Arizona is visible in the land. The saguaro, agave, ocotillo, and creosote bush used to beautify the university campus are sacred plants to the Tanatam. The mountains that surround the University of Arizona and contribute to the advancement in the studies of the Southwest at the UA are the homes of our ancestors. Babatoag, also known as Mount Lemon, Chimamactoag, also known as Tumamak Hill, Toakuo, also known as Santa Rita Mountains, are just several of the many mountain ranges important to the Tanatam culture and identity. Our connection to the land is living and breathing in us here in Chikshan. We use this connection to the land and our ancestors to guide our studies at the University of Arizona. Tehugi, Sapa, thank you.
During this webinar, participants will have the opportunity to ask panelists questions using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. Please feel free to ask any questions, and we will take the time towards the end of the presentation to answer them. Next, I will hand this over to Aries.
Thank you, Leslie. Today we will be featuring the U.S. Embassy in Mexico City. The U.S. Embassy in Mexico City is home to one of the largest and most important U.S. missions in the world, with approximately 190 U.S. embassies worldwide. Mission Mexico provides the largest American citizen services operation immigrant visa operation, fraud prevention. Represented in the ranks of the U.S. Embassy in Mexico City are various executive branch agencies with offices and representatives, including the Department of Justice. Jal will be hosting Christina Vejar, the Department of Justice Attaché, to speak about the embassy's mission, responsibilities, government role, and the U.S.-Mexico relationship. Next up is Vanessa.
Thank you, Aris. So our speaker for today is Christina Vejar, who is the Department of Justice Attaché, serving as the representative for the Attorney General and the Assistant Attorney General for the Criminal Division. So she works directly with prosecution and law enforcement authorities in the U.S. and Mexico on a broad range of criminal investigations and prosecutions. She and her team are responsible for all issues relating to extradition and mutual legal assistance in criminal matters from Mexico, working in close coordination with the DOJ's Office of International Affairs, providing legal guidance to the U.S. prosecutors and to law enforcement personnel at the embassy, and participating in the negotiation of bilateral law enforcement agreements. Christina is a 2001 Poli-Sci and MAS graduate and 2006 graduate of the U of A JD program. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, everybody. Like Vanessa said, my name is Christina Vejar. I am a alum of the University of Arizona. Like Vanessa said, I graduated in 2001 and in 2006. I also have a master's in public administration from Texas A&M University. I've been, I think you can go to the next slide, Vanessa. I have been a prosecutor for approximately 15 years. Immediately after law school, I started as a local district attorney, what we call in Arizona a county attorney. After that, I was a assistant state attorney general in Arizona, and now I work for the Department of Justice as an assistant United States attorney for the District of Arizona. Over the years, I prosecuted a variety of different cases, including homicides, sex crimes, crimes against children, fraud, and more recently, organized crime cases. Currently, I am what we call on a detail to the U.S. Embassy in Mexico City. And basically what that means is that the Department of Justice has me on loan to the U.S. Embassy in Mexico City. You can move to the next slide, Vanessa, please. The U.S. Embassy in Mexico City, I'll just tell you a bit about that. I do not work for the Department of State. I am a Department of Justice employee, again, on loan to the Department of State, pretty much. And a little bit about the mission in Mexico. The mission in Mexico is one of the largest diplomatic missions that we have in the world. Obviously, because of the proximity that we are to the United States, we have a lot of U.S. citizen visitors here, U.S. permanent residents that come and visit, or some U.S. citizens who live here. So there's a lot of services that the U.S. Embassy needs to provide throughout the country. This mission specifically includes the embassy, which, like all of our embassies, is located in the capital city in Mexico City here. But it also includes 9 consulates, which is a very large mission in one country. It includes consulates in Nogales, Hermosillo, Tijuana, Matamoros, Ciudad Juárez, Monterrey, Mérida, Guadalajara, and a missing one, Nuevo Laredo. So the mission is quite large, and we have presences in a lot of different cities throughout Mexico. In this particular mission, it employs more than 1,700 people. About 60% of those people are actually Mexican citizens. So the embassy tends to run a lot because of our Mexican local hires, we call them, and they do a lot of support staff functions and assistance to the embassy employees that come directly from the United States, like myself. The role of an embassy, U.S. Embassy abroad, is really to foster relations with the foreign country through all kinds of different programming, whether that be, like it says on the slide, agricultural, commerce, tourism, cultural education, journalism, economy, transportation, law, science. A mission, especially as big as Mission Mexico, does a lot of different programming. And a lot of that is aimed at security here in the United States because of the proximity to Mexico, but they do a lot of other things. They do educational programs for students to come to the United States from Mexico. They do a lot of cultural programming to try and build goodwill in foreign countries based by sharing our cultural experiences in the United States with foreign citizens abroad. And also promoting our economy abroad. So we have representations from the Department of Commerce, the Treasury Department, and a lot of their functions is trying to promote our commerce and our economy abroad. So there's a lot of different programming, a lot of different functions of a U.S. Embassy abroad. And the Department of Justice is a small piece of that. We can go on to the next slide, please. Just to give you an idea of how broad of a mission this is, Mission Mexico has one of the largest embassies. However, it has the largest presence of U.S. Executive agencies abroad. And the reason for that is obviously proximity and the amount of interaction that we have with Mexico. And there's a lot of U.S. interests, obviously, in Mexico. So from the Department of Agriculture, we have a couple of different agencies represented, the Foreign Agricultural Service and the Animal Plant Health Inspection Service. In the Department of Commerce, we have Foreign Commercial Service. The Department of Defense, they have a Defense Attaché office and an Office of Defense Cooperation. Homeland Security has a very big presence here because of the amount of travel back and forth. We have representation from Citizen and Immigration Services, Homeland Security Investigations, Secret Service, Customs and Border Patrol. So there's a lot of different agencies from HSI, from DHS, I'm sorry. Health and Human Services, CDC is represented as well as the FDA and Health and Human Services. What's really interesting is that we have always had a presence here in Mexico, but never has Health and Human Services been had more of an impact than right now during this pandemic. Our attaché for the Department of Health and Human Services has gotten a lot of work in the last year because of the pandemic, coordinating efforts with Mexico, coordinating all kinds of efforts that the United States is doing here to assist with the pandemic and also to coordinate our responses, including not shutting down the border, but restricting border access. As all of you know, in Tucson, the border has been restricted. And a lot of that comes from joint meetings and interactions between Mexican officials and our Health and Human Services attaché. So they've gotten a lot of work in the last year. And obviously the Justice Department, which is where I work, we have representatives from ATF, DEA, FBI, and the Marshal Service and other offices here. Treasury also has the IRS represented and the Office of Foreign Asset Control. We have representatives from Fish and Wildlife and the Department of Energy, Peace Corps, and USAID. So you can see that there's a lot of federal agencies represented in this mission. And this is the mission that has the largest representation of federal agencies abroad because of the amount of interactions that we have on a variety of levels here. You can go ahead and change the slide, Vanessa. So just a little bit about what an attaché is, because I imagine this may be the first time that many of you have actually even heard the word. So every agency that is not under the Department of State umbrella is represented by what we call an attaché. And in diplomatic circles, the attaché is a person that is assigned to the diplomatic staff to represent their office. We are attached to the U.S. Embassy from our home agencies. So go ahead and change the slide. In the Department of Justice, I am the assigned attaché for the Department of Justice. My office has 3 attorneys in it and about 5 support staff that work for us, most of them local Mexican employees. And not the attorneys are obviously Department of Justice attorneys. But our role is to represent the Attorney General of the United States and the Assistant Attorney General for the Criminal Division. We are their official representatives to the embassy, and our role is to represent the interests of the Department of Justice here in Mexico. Go ahead and change the slide, please. The majority of our work revolves around extradition matters and what we call mutual legal assistance requests. And what those are is, I mean, extraditions, I think, are self-explanatory. When the United States is seeking a fugitive who has fled or who is living in a foreign country, we request from that foreign country that they extradite the person back to the United States. And it's a very long process, and a formal request has to be made through diplomatic channels to the foreign country. And so I work here in Mexico with the Mexican Attorney General's office to facilitate those requests and to provide them any additional information that they might need, and to facilitate the return of the fugitive back to the United States so that they can face the criminal justice system in the United States. Mutual legal assistance requests are formal requests that one country makes to another for legal assistance in a criminal case. And sometimes, especially with the proximity that we have to Mexico, we need witnesses from Mexico, or we need pieces of evidence from Mexico, or we need evidence from Mexico. We need all kinds of assistance. Sometimes we have civil forfeiture cases that are attached to our criminal cases, but the property is in Mexico, and so we need assistance to forfeit or seize those items. So there's all a wide variety of assistance that foreign countries ask of each other in criminal investigations and criminal cases, interviews, collection of DNA for an investigation, and those go through the Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty that we have with Mexico. And so we facilitate all of those requests, and we coordinate with Mexico to make sure all of those requests are filled. And our office also assists Mexico with their extraditions and their mutual legal assistance requests to the United States. The other function of our office is that we act as a legal advisor for the embassy. So I act as a legal advisor sometimes to the ambassador or the deputy chief of mission when they have questions about the criminal justice system or requests of the Department of Justice. I act as that facilitator. We also act as a legal advisor to our many law enforcement agents here at post, at the embassy, advising them on all kinds of legal issues in regards to investigations that they are assisting with, and also providing legal advice to our U.S. prosecutors back in the States. Sometimes they have cases that involve Mexico or involve some sort of international bend to them, and they have questions about working with Mexico bilaterally and doing joint investigations or requesting information from Mexico, and we provide that assistance to them. And my final role here is engaging in bilateral enforcement agreements. We have a lot of agreements with Mexico and how we interact informally and formally on criminal justice matters, and my office assists in developing those agreements and engaging with Mexico to come to these types of agreements. So those are our three major functions in our office. Go ahead and thank you. So as I said before, the Department of Justice has a pretty large presence here in Mexico. In fact, it's our largest presence of any foreign embassy abroad. And the reason for that is just the proximity and the amount of work that we do with Mexico. We have representatives from DEA, ATF, United States Marshal Service, the FBI, and the Department of Justice Criminal Division. This also includes representatives of what we call our OPDAT program, and that's Overseas Prosecutorial Development and Training. We have various Department of Justice attorneys here in Mexico whose job it is to train and assist Mexico in building up their criminal justice system. So they provide all types of courses to Mexican prosecutors' offices and law enforcement agents to help them develop their new system. They have a new criminal justice system that was implemented by a constitutional amendment back in 2016 or 2017. And what it does is it has changed the Mexican criminal justice system from an inquisitory system to an accusatorial system. So they're doing a lot of things that we've already done for many years, like a criminal trial, where the defendant has the right to question and confront any of their accusers or any witnesses against them. So Mexican prosecutors are learning how to do trials right now. They're doing opening statements and learning how to do cross-examinations and direct examinations and closing arguments, and to present evidence in a trial. And we, the Department of Justice, has sent various attorneys down here who live down here and work down here to assist Mexico in getting that system up to the standards of other countries that have already been doing this. Go ahead and change the slide, please. As I said before, Mission Mexico is a very, very large mission with 9 different consulates and over 1,700 employees. It's a pretty large mission. And one of the reasons for that is that we have the largest American citizen services operation. As you guys all know, living near the border, we have a lot of tourism from Mexico, from the United States, and a lot of individuals, American citizens who choose to live here in Mexico. And so as a result of that, there's a lot of services that need to be provided to American citizens here, including passport services and other consular requests that occur here at the embassy and the different consulates. Sometimes, right now it's spring break time. We have a lot of spring breakers who come down to Puerto Vallarta or Cancun, and they get into jams here, in Mexico with public intoxication or other things, and the American embassies and consulates will provide services to them to help them navigate the criminal justice system, or if they need some assistance to get back home. American Citizen Services is here to provide those types of advice and assistance to them. So because we have a large presence of American citizens traveling for tourism and living here, that is why we have a large American citizen service operation. We also have one of the largest immigrant visa operations in the world. We have a lot of requests for immigrant visas to the United States, and as a result of that, we have a very large consular section here in Mexico that processes all of those visa requests. And finally, I think one of the other reasons is because our countries are very economically and culturally intertwined. Mexico is currently the second largest trading partner for the United States. I don't have the 2020 numbers, but in 2019, there was more than $680 billion in bilateral trade that crossed our borders between the two countries. So it is a very large economic, the countries rely on each other economically a lot. And because of that, there's a lot of trade, a lot of commerce, and a lot of interaction between our two countries. And that requires a lot of diplomatic efforts to keep that running smoothly. Go ahead and change to the next slide. Just a little bit about the Department of State and how they run their embassies in the Foreign Service. There are more than 270 embassies worldwide, U.S. embassies worldwide, consulates, and other diplomatic missions. The way that the State Department is organized is that there's 5 different tracks that you can choose for your career. They call them informally cones. I'm not sure why they call them cones, but that's what they call them. And consular, economic, management, political, and political officers. And public diplomacy. So I'll just give you a little idea of what each does. I do not work for the Department of State, and so I've learned all this while being stationed here for the last couple of years. So I'll just give you a little bit of information of what I know. So consular officers are the people that are providing you as American citizens, as American residents, emergency and non-emergency services while you are here in Mexico. So if you lose your passport while you're vacationing or visiting Mexico, they are the ones that are going to help you get that passport back. They're the ones that are going to help you get your papers in order so that you can return to the United States. They are also the people that are assisting foreign nationals here in Mexico to obtain their visas to go visit the United States or to go live and work in the United States. So the consular officers do a lot of interactions both with American citizens and Mexican nationals who are wanting to work or live or visit the United States. They do a lot of other ancillary duties. They work a lot with our law enforcement officers to deal with kidnapping cases or human trafficking cases, because sometimes those are American citizens or the people are being or are American residents that are being kidnapped or a crime being committed against them. And so they work closely with American law enforcement to address those issues. There's also economic officers, and they concentrate on a lot of commerce, banking, trade issues that affect both countries. They also deal with scientific and technology matters that affect both countries. So they're very much engaged with the commercial and trade representatives of foreign countries. There's also a management and administrative cone. The Department of State is, again, another federal agency. It's another business that needs to be run, and we need HR people, and you need facilities management people, and you need financial officers. And so there is a track within the State Department that deals with managing the actual buildings and the actual functioning of embassies. And so that's another cone that they develop. Political officers are people that are engaged in interacting and monitoring legislative and political developments that happen in foreign countries. And these are actually the people that I work with the most, because a lot of legislation that has to do with security here in Mexico affects our cooperation with Mexico. So political officers, they also promote U.S. policy objectives with foreign government officials. So things that could affect the U.S. interests, the political officers are the ones that are engaging with Mexican legislatures and Mexican officials to try and promote our interests and our requests abroad. And then finally, you have the public diplomacy officers, and this cone is basically the people that are public face to the foreign host nation. And they are your public information officers, your press office. They are people also doing cultural and information exchanges. So they do a lot of the goodwill programs for the State Department. Go ahead and change slides. There's becoming a State Department Foreign Service officer is a very lengthy process. It's a very rigorous process. And it starts off with a Foreign Service officer test that you have to take through the State Department. If you make it past the written test, then they will do an oral assessment or oral process with you, doing interviews and to determine if you are a good fit for the State Department. Then obviously there's medical and security backgrounds that you have to go through to make sure that you are physically fit and that you are not a security risk to the federal government. And then after that, if you make it past all of those stages, there's a suitability review panel where they kind of review everything about you and all of these different assessments to see if you are a good fit for the State Department. So it's a very lengthy process. I have friends that have gone through this process, and it's taken them a year or 2 years to go through the process. So people that become Foreign Service officers really enjoy working abroad, learning new cultures. They move every 3 to 4 years to another posting usually. They are taught foreign languages. It's a really fascinating career, but it is difficult to get into the State Department as a Foreign Service officer. Go ahead and change the slide. Now, obviously, I am not a Foreign Service officer because I do not work for the State Department, but there are opportunities for individuals who work for other agencies to work in an embassy and to be a diplomat. So each agency has their own method and their own selection process. Most of them are very rigorous in their competitive processes where they ask employees back in the States to apply for these positions abroad. And every agency does their own. In my case, I had to apply to our Office of International Affairs in DC for this position. And they do a lengthy review of your resume, writing samples, they check references, they interview you, and then it has to be approved by various levels within the Department of Justice for you to be selected. So for my agency, it's a selective process, it's a rigorous process. And it also depends on how long you've been with your agency. They obviously want somebody who's an expert in their agency and in their field, because you're going to be that official, that agency's representative in a foreign country. So they want somebody that has spent time with that agency and understands that agency well. Obviously, you need to have some sort of foreign language proficiency, because if you're going to go live in a foreign country and interact with foreign officials, you need to be able to communicate well with them. Some agencies will pay for you to learn a foreign language, and others will not. You have to develop that on your own. For example, my position, you had to develop that on your own, and you had to have that proficiency before you applied. And finally, judgment, good judgment. You're going to be living in a foreign country where the challenges are going to be very different than living at home, from cultural to political challenges. And your agency needs to know that you have the proper judgment to represent not only your agency, but the U.S. government in a respectful and appropriate manner. So every agency has its own selection process. I'm just telling you kind of what I went through to get this. And that's pretty much working and living in an embassy abroad. I'm happy to take questions and answer any specifics you have. I know we ran through that pretty quickly.
Yeah, thank you, Christina, for sharing your experiences and knowledge for our participants today. Now we will transition to the Q&A portion of this webinar. First question we have here is, what advice would you give to a student who is interested in this field of work?
Yeah, so I think developing a good background in government and deciding what it is you want to do for government. There's so many different fields that you can get into. Like I said, we have representatives here from Fish and Wildlife, from the Department of Health and Human Services, the Department of Commerce. So pretty much every field that you can think of is going to be represented in the Foreign Service in different embassies. If what you're wanting to do is go into the State Department itself and be a Foreign Service officer, obviously developing a good understanding of different cultures is important. Foreign language is important, although with the State Department, they will teach you foreign language if in various scenarios. So that's not as big of an issue, but they do value somebody who already knows some foreign language and has that ability. But being open to different cultures and being open to that type of lifestyle is very important. Moving every few years, that's it takes a special person to want to move every 3 to 4 years, because that's what Foreign Service officers end up doing. In terms of education, obviously you're going to be representing your country abroad, and that requires you to be knowledgeable about your government. It requires you to be to have a certain level of respect for foreign governments and foreign cultures. And you do that obviously by educating yourself in whatever field you decide to go into, but also about foreign countries and different cultures, different ways of doing things. So I think being open and being a well-rounded individual is very important, but also just being a good student in whatever field you end up wanting to choose. The State Department, like I said, it's very rigorous to get into the State Department. They're going to look at your grades. They're going to look at your life experiences. They want somebody with a lot of different life experiences and somebody that has a diverse background in terms of what you've done and what you've put yourself out there for. So doing different types of internships, doing study abroads, all these things are going to help you.
Great, thank you. Second question, has the new U.S. or Mexico administration influenced your everyday duties in your current role?
So I actually think that when you work abroad, you actually end up reacting more to the foreign governments than you do transitions in yours. Our recent presidential transition hasn't had a huge impact on our day-to-day work. Our day-to-day work is not political in nature. It is going to be done regardless of who is in office. And so for me, no, it hasn't really. Our presidential transition in the United States, obviously every new administration brings in its own priorities, and maybe priorities will shift your focus, but no, it hasn't really our day-to-day work, no. Now, in terms of new administration coming in the foreign government, yes, that can drastically change how we do our day-to-day work, because a new administration might come in and completely shut down some of the things that we're doing with the foreign government, or they can completely shift their foreign government's priorities drastically, which requires us to respond to those priorities in an appropriate way. So I actually think that more so the foreign governments, the host nations' priorities, if they shift, that sometimes makes a bigger dent in how we do things than when our political administrations change, because the work of the government continues regardless of who's in office. We still have to run the government. The people that work in government still have to do their jobs. And the only thing that's really going to change is maybe one part of our job becomes a new priority over another. But generally speaking, no, I think it's a bigger impact when the foreign administration changes.
Thank you. How did you prepare yourself to live in a different country?
Well, I think for me, it was a little easier because I was coming to Mexico, and being an hour away from Mexico in Tucson, you were already very familiar with Mexico, and having, visited Mexico with family, either for tourism or to visit family members, you develop a sense of familiarity with the country. So for me, it was much easier because I had been to Mexico before and knew a bit about it. But obviously, there are some Foreign Service officers who their first time landing in that country is the first day of their job. And so I think attempting to learn as much about their language and their culture before you arrive is certainly helpful. But there's some things you just can never prepare for. The traffic was a shock to me in Mexico City. But in all seriousness, there are things you can do to prepare yourself. You want to learn as much about their culture and their history because you want to be respectful of that country when you arrive, and you want to be aware of political sensitivities when you arrive, especially if you're going to be interacting with government officials on a daily basis. The more you can learn about that country's culture, the more you can learn about their language and their history. I think it's only a plus, and it's super helpful.
So prior to COVID, how often did you get to travel back to the U.S.? Does the embassy pay for these expenses?
So prior to COVID, I think I was going home, I think in a year's time, I had been home about 4 times. And the government does not pay for my personal trips home. I have to pay for those. In Foreign Service, there is what we call R&R and home leave. And that is, I think once every 2 years, they pay for a trip for you to go home and get a little, and it's harder depending on where you're at. Obviously in Mexico, it's very easy for us to find flights back home to the States. They're very regular. They're not super expensive. It's, we're right next door. And so we have an easier time getting home than, for example, our friends, our colleagues who are stationed in Afghanistan or are stationed in remote posts around the world. So it's easier for us to come home. It's easier for us to be able to afford to come home. But the Foreign Service does pay for at least one trip every couple of years for you to come home and spend an extended period of time back home with friends and family.
Do you see yourself living in a different country as your career progresses? If so, why?
So I've really enjoyed my time here in Mexico City. It's been a really interesting learning experience, both personally and in my career. I would absolutely do this again. The Department of Justice only has a few offices, a few attaché offices around the world. We don't have representation in every single embassy. So our opportunities are limited. I believe that the Department of Justice has attachés in London, Paris, Rome, Colombia, and there's about 3 or 4 other places. So our opportunities to do this are very limited. So I would absolutely consider doing this in another country or in Mexico further down in my career. I am not a Foreign Service officer, so I am not going to be doing this every 2 to 3 years, and that's certainly not for me. Moving every 2 to 3 years is not for me. But the Foreign Service officers that I know absolutely love it. They love experiencing a new culture in a new place every few years, getting to move and getting to experience that. So they absolutely love it. I think it's a very individual preference. Some of us are not into moving every few years like me, but I would absolutely do this again down the road in the future after this tour of duty is done for me.
Last question. What is the most meaningful experience for you being in this career?
Oh boy. I think when we have, for me in the Department of Justice, being able to, in this particular role that I'm in right now, being able to assist a U.S. prosecutor on an important case, either through the extradition of a fugitive or or getting them a key piece of evidence that they need for their case, is very important. We have, I mean, I'll tell you that our biggest kind of cases down here are either organized crime, but also the victim cases. The victim cases are very serious victim cases that we have down here, either homicides. We have a lot of child abuse cases and sex crimes, where people will commit a crime, a homicide or a sex crime or a child abuse case in the United States, and then they flee to Mexico. Being able to get some closure for those victims by helping with the extradition and getting that person back to face justice in the United States, or getting a key piece of evidence for a case in the United States. I think that's the most rewarding, when you get a person back there and then you hear the result that, you know, we were able to convict a child molester. Because that's, well, it's not going to help the victim heal from the actual crime. At least it's going to provide them a little bit of closure, and we're going to make sure that whoever does this is not going to do this again to another person. So I think for me, that's the biggest reward in this particular job.
Great. Thank you so much for answering the questions and taking the time to speak with us today. That closes our Q&A portion, but we will now move forward with Vanessa.
Thank you, Aries. So in closing, we want to thank our panelists for their time today. Thank you so much, Christina. I want to mention that our post-assessment is attached onto this slide, so please take a moment to take out your phones and scan and fill it out as soon as possible, or click the link. We would also like to reiterate that completing this assessment will count as your attendance to this webinar. And if you enjoyed our presentation today, please catch us on Tuesday, March 30th at 1 p.m. for our next Dell-sponsored webinar, where we will be hosting an event centered around local Tucson poetry. And we're super eager to get traveling again, so please stay safe, mask up, and bear down. Thank you.